So for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to just talk to you about some of the themes that actually Stephen set up very nicely for me. Thoughtfulness, the choices, owning the decisions. Those themes will be running through the day, and there will be some, hopefully, thought-provoking presentations, and there will be some opportunities, particularly the networking outside. So hopefully you'll be listening to myself, obviously Stephen, and the other speakers. I can see two of them gazing at me there down there at the front. There's a huge opportunity for us to pause, think about where we've come from, where we're going to, and how we can influence the future. And I'll be perfectly honest, I'm standing here. Most of the people who will be presenting to you don't actually have the defined, granular answers of what the future is going to look like. But we have a pretty good idea, and the only way we can succeed is to succeed together. That's fair, isn't it? So what I'd like to share with you for the next few minutes is sometimes looking backwards is a good way to actually have a view as to what the future might bring. So for the first half of my narrative, I'll be talking to you about what did Renewals look like 60 years ago. Now, gazing around the room, I suspect none of you were here 60 years ago. I started 30 years ago. Anybody? No, let's not go there. So, a couple of nice pictures. And I think those engineers from the past would be quite amazed at the changes over the last few years. And there'd be quite a few similarities in actually how the work was undertaken. But there are some stark contrasts. So I invite you, as I go through these few pictures, just to think about the changes to the workforce, the welfare, the methodologies, the kit that we use, but also the products, the materials, and the quality of the output. Yeah? Because the railway 60 years ago had a different set of requirements to the railway of today. So life moves on, things evolve. Stephen mentioned in his narrative about the framework, the standards. Let's be perfectly honest, the standards have evolved over the years. Largely, right or wrong, largely evolved because something's gone wrong, we've learnt from it, and we correct. So there is a point here that tomorrow's railway will be different from today's railway, and certainly different from yesterday's railway. So the framework that we have needs to be flexible, but we absolutely have to recognise we can challenge it. So these people here, I assure you the wagon on the left-hand side is moving into the picture, not towards us, but no matter that, would any of you like to be sitting underneath those rails, thimbling the rails out? Hands up. No volunteers, okay. PPE. Things have changed a little bit. Lots of people there manually handling, barring the rails out and getting ready for the rails to go back in. And somewhere not in shot of the picture, there'll be somebody dishing out the pads just as the rail has been dropped down, you know, possibly getting their fingers trapped. On the right-hand side, we've got a picture there of the bottom ballast has been down. We've got a cast of, I'm not entirely sure if it's hundreds, but certainly dozens, scattered over the site. Again, very little by way of PPE. It's on daylight. Back in those days, again, I wasn't around, so I'm making a grand assumption here. Back in those days, really nice long possessions to get your work done. And I started in 1991. It wouldn't be unusual to have 24, 48, 72-hour possessions to actually get the work undertaken. It's a little bit different now, isn't it? Site lighting, clearly it stays there, but the people in that generation, they largely did the renewals during daylight because it wasn't practical to actually work in the evenings and nights because they simply couldn't see what they were doing. Signing on cabins. Where do you think these guys, because they are guys, let's be perfectly honest, where do you think they signed on before shift? Their pub, absolutely. And I'm sure their safety record was spotless because nobody reported any accidents. So life has moved on quite a lot. Let's look at the next slide. So I particularly like the one on the left-hand side. Preheating of the rails. Big, dirty, great gas bottles. It's fantastic. Actually, there's a methodology which is still used today, largely out in Europe. Actually, nothing wrong with it if it can be done in a safe way. And who knows, in terms of innovation, we might consider methods like that coming back into the UK, but certainly I would feel a little bit uncomfortable about gas bottles being wheeled around on site in that methodology. And something I'm not actually familiar with, I had to sort of double check it, and Eric helped me out with this, so credit to Eric, thank you very much. I'm going to just check my notes here. Panel barrows, pictured on the right-hand side. So 300-foot rails being levered into place by this strange contraption. Panel barrows. Who's heard of panel barrows? Mr. Barber. Were you on the shift, Steve? No, definitely not. But that's fantastic. Life has moved on. Lots and lots and lots of people out on site. So moving towards perhaps the almost modern era, and I think this is a point about innovation. The system on the railway changes. We look for innovations. Picture on the left-hand side is the flash butt welding machine. I'll be perfectly honest, hand on heart, I was quite a fan of the flash butt welder. It's a really, really good idea. Lots of potential benefits to it. Ultimately, it didn't make the cut. It didn't make the cut because of quality control of the product, also the faff of getting on and off site and various kind of developments. But it doesn't mean it was a bad idea. It just got to a certain point, challenged our thinking, and maybe it'll come back at some point. But it was a good idea at the time. And we got PEM LEMs there. I used to love PEM LEMs on site. It's a really good bit of kit. I confess I've actually not seen them recently. Quick show of hands, have we been using these recently? Yeah? Excellent. But they're a niche product, aren't they? We'd use them when we have a particular need. It depends on the methodology. It depends on the site. So there's a key point here that tech evolves. Some continue because they provide a solution to today's problems, or some tech actually has to be paused and shelved because maybe it was a bit too soon, but it doesn't mean we can't look back again and pull it forward if it actually solves a problem for the future. Let's look at the next one. Equipment, evolution of equipment. So I think that's the theme I just wanted to pull out here. Steam cranes. I've never seen a steam crane in real life. I love the pictures. But all of these bits of kit, maybe other than the TRM in the middle there, broadly do a similar job. Might be clunky, difficult to get on site in various different places, but we can see the evolution. So we've got steam crane on the left, rail mounted, various other tracked steam cranes up on the top. I'll say the TRM. Who's still using TRMs? Hands up. There must be more of you than that using TRM, surely. Yeah. Refurbished, still working, because they solve a problem. But can we do things better? And then we got on the bottom right-hand side, the Kirov. Brilliant bit of kit, quality controlled, ultra safe, calculates all the various different shifts in weight to make sure it doesn't overturn. Can't say that of the steam cranes. That was down to a calibrated operator doing the right thing at the time. Sometimes it was all right, sometimes it didn't, but we've evolved our technology. And I don't know if Nick Matthews is floating around here today. Quick show. Oh, there you are, Nick. So Nick is probably thinking there, what about the stuff that I've been proposing and road rail cranes? That is the thought process for the future. So there's innovation about how we can continuously evolve the kit that we've got. And I know Gareth's going to be talking about RD&I a little bit later on. So what have we got next? So we consider the quality control on site. So the people of yesteryear, they would have done a pretty good quality job for the requirements of their time. We live in an era now where we've got access to digital technology, GPS control for the dozers. I started with laser dozers back in the day. I used to like setting up my lasers for the laser dozers. It's moved on, GPS, tandem tamping. Let's be perfectly honest, that's not really that new, but what it does give us is a really good finished final product, doesn't it? So it helps us get high-speed handbacks at the end of the day. The AFM, bottom left, brilliant piece of kit. Again, not particularly new, but this is the kind of stuff that we still use today. And it's a tool for now, because it fulfills our requirements. I invite you to consider what the tools of the future might look like. It might be evolutions of these, or it might be something slightly different. And then the sleeper panel, sleeper baler there. For me, when I started, the height of technology was a 4 sleeper baler, and then that's what, is that a 6 or an 8? I think there might be a 8 in there somewhere. So from this half of my narrative, I'll just say we can see we have gone through a light years of change for the welfare of our people. We run a much, much safer work site, don't we? We really do. I reflect, and I'm looking through the lens of conventional renewals, and maybe somebody wants to ask about the high output kit, maybe in Q&A, and I'm happy to sort of discuss that. But the methodology is pretty much the same, isn't it? It's evolved, the kit has evolved, but the methodology of digging out or removing the track, digging out, placing the ballast, renewing the track, it is what it is. We've evolved that methodology, but what else can we do more efficiently, more effectively? And obviously I mentioned about the quality control. Back 60 years ago, there wasn't such a big challenge about line speed handback, was there? Now there is. And I'll talk more on that in a minute or two. How am I doing for time, Eric? Fine, okay. So, when I was preparing for this presentation, I was contemplating what was the best narrative, best nuggets to pass on to you. And I had the opportunity at the Chief Engineers conference to listen to some words from Andrew Haynes. And I thought, that's brilliant. I like what he said. So the next few slides, I'm just going to do my best Andrew Haynes impression. Don't tell him. Are we recording this? Yes, we are. Oh, my God. But let's just have a quick look at some thoughts that Andrew passed on. They were quite powerful words, and I thought I'd share those with you. So let me just quickly ask, who has heard of Andrew Haynes' 4 E's? Quick show of hands. Not too many of you, some of you. And this came as a result of a question somebody asked him about, in his role as Chief Executive of Network Rail, what does he want of his engineers? And he paused and he thought, and I'm pretty sure he did this off the cuff, to be honest, and he said, well, excellence, efficiency, engagement, and endurance. These themes are quite similar to some of the things that Stephen mentioned as well. Excellence ties through to the other 3 items, and I'll just cover off some of those thoughts. So we've mentioned our framework. Where's my laser pointer? There we go. We mentioned our framework there. As the custodian or the chief engineer on behalf of Network Rail, I'm quite comfortable with any challenges to the framework. We only improve by listening to good ideas. I'll say more on that in a second. But, oh, my format's gone a bit wonky. But we have to be focused on what are the outcomes. What is the best outcome for the location, for the site? How do we get there? We can only do that by challenging, discussing, and considering what that needs to be, and ensuring we've got the right scope. There's words about minimum viable product. Minimum viable product, hands up, who's heard of that? There we go, that message is landed. Who's heard of whole life cost? Next pop quiz. Is minimum viable product and whole life cost mutually exclusive? Hands up if you think it is. Ooh, interesting. So I think that's something we should continue to debate. You might be right, for those of you who put your hands up. I'd like to challenge us to think, well, actually, if we make a minimum viable product decision, we need to be considering actually what that means to whole life cost. And 99% of the time, I think the whole life cost can tie through to the minimum viable product, and they should be absolutely the same decision. And if they're not, we need to consider why and actually have a debate as to what that challenge particularly is. But let's look at the numbers. I thought I'd just share this with you. It's a slightly earlier cut, but for CP7 we have our final determination. We're going through some conversations now about extra efficiencies we can achieve with the ORR. But let's just have a look at this. So we can see, sorry, going away from the microphone, we can see for track, laser pointer's died. Oh well. See the top line for track, in terms of billions, we're around about just below 4.5 billion. Okay, slightly less than CP6 and a slight deterioration or reduction from previous control periods. But actually, that's okay. What we have to do is recognise where the risks are for the assets. There's a positive decision for the business. And in the round, it's about 20 billion for renewals. You see the bottom right-hand side. Some of the money has been spent on other assets. It will revert to a degree in future control periods. We talked earlier about the potential opportunities for cost reduction. Very easy for me or anybody to stand in the front and say, work harder, be cheaper. We already would be if it was easy, wouldn't we? It's really, really hard. But that is part of our goal. We have to focus ourselves in that particular direction. So I'm almost there, don't worry. In terms of the next couple of themes, engagement and endurance. I love this picture on the right-hand side. It's a brilliant picture. So Ernest Shackleton set out earlier in this century, got stuck in the ice. He and 26 others survived. Whether he knew, well, clearly he didn't, but he planned ahead. So that bubble there, which, again, the words have gone slightly wonky there, but be thorough. Understand the consequences. We have processes, CSM, we've got the SRP, Safety Review Panels. If we make a decision, we need to be clear on what those consequences are. And maybe that ties back to a little bit of anxiety I've got about minimum viable product. It's okay making a decision about the minimum now, but let's understand what that means for the future. Do we accept those consequences, or are they not palatable? In which case, is the minimum viable product actually the minimum viable product? Debate. Big brains, big ears. That's the point about debating. Listening, thinking, talking, solving those problems. Being curious. Brilliant word that Stephen used earlier. And there's a key here about sticking to the mission. Stephen mentioned about resilience. Yes, we live in a very conservative industry, quite rightly so. But if you think you're right, you've got a great challenge, be brave, keep challenging. People like me will support you. I might not agree with what you're challenging, but I'll support your right to challenge. You will be heard. We will debate. And we'll get to the right outcome. So, what do I think the bottom line is? As always, it's cost, safety, performance. Performance in the railways at this moment and the whole system really isn't good enough, is it? The train this morning I was on was delayed. And that wasn't a particular infrastructure issue, it was train crew. But we can all contribute to the performance of the railway. That is our jobs. We're railway people after all. So, just bear in mind of the time. My opinion on what's next, and this is purely my opinion, technology, kit, process. That's the brilliant thing about days like today. We can share ideas with each other, and we need to take the best lever, best pull on what's already available to us. RD&I. Gareth's going to be talking to you about RD&I. Stephen mentioned about the decision support. There's a table outside Insight. I encourage you all to talk to the troops on the insight table. It might seem a little bit distant to the renewals area, but I think we've got the opportunity to create tools to support asset management decisions for where and when renewals are going to be undertaken. There's a next generation equipment. We've seen an evolution over 60 years. What is the next generation of our kit? I mentioned stuff that Nick's looking after. Eric's focusing and working with the route services team about the kit for high output for next control period. What does that look like? And finally, whole life cost. I've said my piece about minimal viable product and whole life cost. It's massively important we make the right decisions, and I'll tie back to another theme that Stephen mentioned earlier. We own those decisions. Do not be a victim. Always challenge, but own those decisions that you make. And let's work together and get a better railway. Thank you very much. I'm done.